Hello and welcome to week 14 of the Punt Return podcast. I'm Josh Y. As always, I'm joined by Nick Splitter and James Rosenwald. Gents, before I get to you, just want to start a very public podcast campaign here for our friend and Stats Insider friend as well, Dane Roy. He's one of 3 nominees for the Ray Guy Award for the best punter in college football. And he's a ripper bloke, former ice cream salesman, like one of the greatest journeys of all time. So... and he's Aussie, and he's up against another Aussie, but a part of the Ray Guy Award is done by fan vote. So if you can head to www.rayguyaward.com/fan-vote, or, we'll put it out on the socials as well. Go and vote for Dane Roy, because he's just going to have a ripper speech if he wins, because he's one of the greatest characters in Australian college history. He's a champion guy. So we're going to vote for it. We're going to get behind Dane Roy. Isn't that right, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. He's a great bloke, as you said. He's also been writing some college football stuff for us this season. And like you said, ripper bloke, and good luck to him.
Exactly. And speaking of ripper blokes, thankfully we are, and we're not like an NFL head coach. But we didn't have a ripper week last week, so if we were NFL coaches, we probably would have been fired after our collective performance last week. But the real coaching carousel has begun. Riverboat Ron, he'd fit really well on this show, James, with that sort of nickname. But last week our results were terrible. We probably went 0-9 across the board. Couple of picks carry over, but yeah, it was not a good week.
It wasn't a good week. Dallas falling, Vikings missing out on covering their line, New England going down as well. So yeah, not the best.
No, and let's speak to that, and we'll get to Riverboat Ron in a little bit. I think that's your major takeaway, James. But week 13 results, Dallas no good, lock of the week. We're still 9-4-1. They lost outright. And speaking of that game, my long shot was Josh Allen to have 50 rushing yards. He had 44. He went close. That was 250 there for 50-plus rushing yards. I probably didn't deserve it because I said that Josh Allen wasn't gifted enough or didn't have the skill or the talent to rip apart Dallas's obvious flaws on defense, and Josh Allen did exactly that. So egg on my face, and credit where credit's due. I'm eating crow on that. A big fat L. Josh Allen's really improved over the last month, so good for him and good for the Bills. But yeah, that made me look foolish. But Nick, our lone win last week was your Derrick Henry long shot.
Yeah, that was. I thought that was always pretty safe, but it was what a horrific week for the podcast. Yeah, just horrible. But hopefully the listeners kind of understand that our records are good enough that we can overcome it, and we'll have a bounce back week hopefully this week.
Yeah, so I went 0-3, and they weren't even close to anything remotely covering. Zona got destroyed. Carolina, they led 14-0 and then didn't score any more points. And then New England lost outright. But still 22-15-2. And then Nick 0-3 as well with a lot of yours. I mean, Jets lost outright as well. Dallas lost outright. The LA total probably could have gone over if Blake Bortles didn't play the fourth quarter though.
Yeah, no, it was just a horrible week all around. It's, like you said, I don't think any of us deserve to win.
No, exactly. Let's talk biggest takeaways from week 13. And James, I touched on Riverboat Ron before. I think that's your kind of takeaway now as we head towards the end of the season, and a lot of teams are ruled out of playoff contention, and sort of that coaching carousel starts to spin.
Yeah, exactly. Regime change is in the air. That's that sort of big whiff that's hovering over the whole league. And it started with
I thought it was bushfires in Australia, that whiff.
Well, that's more in New South Wales, Queensland, I think, for sure, unfortunately.
Yep.
But then who'll be next? And by my count, we could be turning over a quarter of the league over the next couple of months. Giants, massive changes coming. Jacksonville, Cleveland could go a different direction than Kitchens. Chargers, Atlanta we've spoken about a couple of times. Washington obviously already in turmoil. Chicago could go a couple of different ways, as could Detroit. So it's going to be a really sort of violent period of change, but at least Carolina got the start on it all.
Yeah, a little bit. I found the Carolina decision curious. I thought they should have just waited till the end of the year because, I mean, what's doing it now, getting the jump on? A lot of these college coaches or highly regarded coordinators are still in the middle of playoff runs and things. I always find it weird this time of the year where you're trying to interview coaches that are still focused on winning a Super Bowl or winning playoff games or winning the college football national championship. So I don't know. Riverboat Ron's going to find. I think he's going to end up being the next head coach of the Giants and link up with Gettleman again.
And that's the thing. It helps out Riverboat Ron as well to get a head start on his potential opportunities as well. Rather than that kind of sour taste of getting fired on Black Monday, he gets a chance as well. It was kind of a nice divorce, it seemed.
Yeah, I mean, all all the reports are that Riverboat Ron's just a fantastic guy.
Yeah.
They call him the Dane Roy of coaches, so just a really great guy. Anyway, Nick, what's your major takeaway from week 13?
Well, who deserves to win the NFC East? I mean, obviously we've spoken about it a number of times. Passionate Eagles fan, and it's really easy to sit here and go, well, the Eagles have been rubbish and they don't deserve to win the NFC East, but neither the Cowboys really. They looked like up until halfway that they were going to run away with the division, but they've lost 2 out of the last 3 or 2 out of the last 4 and played some really ugly football. I'm just not sure what to take from this division. It's just really horrible football at the moment. And the worst thing about it is that the Redskins can actually win the division and play playoffs. That is just, that's
I've seen a few Jim Carrey, so you're telling me there's a chance memes with the Washington Redskins.
Yeah.
I mean,
God.
it's crazy. Could you imagine
horrific.
it? Could you imagine that? Yeah,
Wow.
it is the weakest division, I think, easily. We'll talk about the Eagles. They've got a game, and the Cowboys. That's going to be our first game in week 14 in a minute, and I think we'll expand on that topic. My major takeaway is the curious case of Nick Foles. Now what? What do the Jags do? This team probably should have won a Super Bowl 2 years ago with Blake Bortles. If Miles Jack fumble recovery didn't get called dead, they probably make the Super Bowl. And it's a game. They probably had a chance if they were in that game to win a Super Bowl, and now they've gone all in on Nick Foles and opened the checkbook. And now they have this Gardner Minshew, this 6th-round pick that's obviously better, fits better in the team. Like, now what? Like, what's the future there? I don't know what's going to happen in Jacksonville, and I think part of the regime change that James touched on, we'll have to sort out that mess.
At least they have a quarterback there, though, rather than having to dip into free agency, and he's on short ends on little money as well as a 6th-round pick. So
exactly. They're going to take a massive cap hit, so it's almost as if they're paying Minshew anyway.
And they're paying Blake Bortles as well to play elsewhere. So I think there was a $27 million dead cap figure there. So
Tom Coughlin.
Yeah.
Exactly. My other takeaway is the NFL 100 team list is just dumb. It's so dumb. No Justin Tucker at kicker, even nominated for kicker. He's the greatest kicker of all time. Patrick Peterson over Richard Sherman at corner. They didn't list Bobby Wagner as a linebacker. They had Von Miller listed as a linebacker when he plays edge. It's just ridiculous. And I know they're going to stuff up some quarterbacks here or there. So I'm out on it. I'm done. I'm done with it. I mean, it's a cool concept and everything, but I'm done. I'm done with it. Wouldn't be an episode if I didn't rile against something. So anyway, it's like a couch session for me. I should lay down on the couch when I do these. Right, let's get straight into week 14. There's some good games. There's also some games that we'll completely skip over as we get to the pointy end of the season. Thursday night football though, this does have relevance. Dallas -2.5 at Chicago. The total is 43. I have a small lean to Dallas, but I mean, a dome team traveling outdoors, a bit of weather about. I'm probably going to pass and just leave it. The Bears have won 3 of their last 4 games, but they came against 2 different Lions backup quarterbacks. The Giants, who have lost 8 straight. So Dallas, they've lost 3 of their last 4, but those teams came against teams that are 8-4 at worst, and they actually outgained their opponents in each of those games. So they've actually outscored their opponents this season 310 to 236, which normally should indicate that they're roughly 8-4. There was a tweet last week that showed that, like, in terms of point differential, yards, everything, that the Cowboys probably should have the Seahawks record, and the Seahawks should have the Cowboys record. And they still haven't beaten a winning team, but they've lost so narrowly to them. It was 12-10 to New Orleans, 28-24 to Minnesota, and 13-9 to New England. So obviously it comes down to coaching, but they should be a lot better than they are. Like, there's just, something's not right there, and you think, you state all that, you think, Dallas should win and win easily, but I just don't know, and I can't trust the Clapper, so I'm gonna pass on this game. What's your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, I agree with you on a lot of that, and I think Jason Garrett's time in Dallas is coming to an end. They were so disappointing last week. They were all set. They were going to have a big win after that first kind of 2 minutes. They scored on the first drive. They were efficient. They did everything right. Even the first quarter, Ezekiel Elliott had 7 rushing attempts of 60-odd yards. And after that, they completely went away from the run. And I just don't understand why they did that when they were dominating at that point. I really don't know where to go with Dallas at the moment. I think this is kind of their last chance. They really need a win, and I think they know it. because they've got the Rams next week, the Eagles after that, and then the Skins to finish off the season. They really need a win because they're in trouble of losing that top spot in the division. And I think they're going to win. I think they're going to take this game really seriously, and I think that they will win and they'll cover. Dallas -2.5.
I think the Cowboys are the pick of the NFC East. I still think they've got the talent. Obviously, we've spoken about all of these coaching issues that are pervading this franchise. Unfortunately for the Cowboys, their wins have come against teams that have struggled on defense, which is something Chicago is still a top 8 unit in that realm. They can still get to the quarterback. That's a concern. Bears have been able to put have rarely been able to put 20 plus points on the board 2 weeks in a row for pretty much 1.5, 2, 3 years now. So I think Dallas should be able to sort of to take advantage of that. 22, 24 points will probably be enough to cover that line. Obviously a hell of a lot more to play for from the Dallas perspective. Cautionary note, Chicago are 10-2 as ATS home dogs over the last 4 seasons. That's the best mark in football. On the other hand, they're the worst ATS team in the NFL this season, 3-9. So
this could come down to which kicker performs less crap. Brett Maher's been terrible, and Pinheiro, or whatever his name is, Pinata, he's been terrible as well. So I just feel like this game comes down to a missed field goal or two, and that's heartbreaking, whatever side you play on this game.
It kind of feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. By the way, I forgot to mention, Dallas, everyone thinks Baltimore's the best offense in the league, but Dallas still has the best success rate this season at 51%, according to Football Outsiders. So the Cowboys are still getting it done. They're a lot better than their record suggests, but I mean, this is stating the obvious, but hashtag coaching matters, and that's where we'll leave it. All right, Baltimore -5.5 at Buffalo. Total is 43. I think apart from New Orleans and the 49ers, probably the game of the week when you look at these two teams' records. I think the line's actually spot on here. The Ravens are well out in front here in my ratings now. They're flying. And San Fran even went up last week, even though they lost. They covered in those conditions and played pretty well on the road. But I like the over here. I think the Ravens, I know they're ranked the top 4 in all 3 phases of the game in terms of their 7th. They're actually the 7th team to ever finish in the top 5 in DVOA for all 3 phases. So they're the best. They're the best team since the 16-0 Patriots in 2007 in terms of DVOA. So I like the over for a few reasons. One, I like that John Harbaugh always goes for it, so that always leads to touchdowns instead of field goals, which is just great for the points. Buffalo, yes, they've got a great defense, but this is easily one of the best offenses that they've faced. I know they faced a good offense last week in Dallas, but they just underperformed. So even if Baltimore underperform, I still think they're going to score more points. They're a better coached team. Buffalo is still giving up 104.3 rushing yards per game, which is huge against this Baltimore rushing attack. And while the under is 9-3 in Buffalo's 12 games this season, including 2 straight now and 4 of the last 5. This is again a totally different beast. Baltimore moving the ball pretty well, and also on the offensive side of the ball, the Bills are actually much more improved on the offense as well. So I like over 43. I think Baltimore could even get there on their own if it ends up being just one of those games where they just steamroll teams, which could happen. I'm not going to touch the line. I think the line's about spot on, but I like the over here, especially given the conditions last week. They still moved the ball pretty well, the Ravens. So I think you agree with me here, Nick.
I do, and that's a bit of a worry. But yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a lot over the last couple of weeks, how good this Ravens team is at the moment. The way I see it, there's really only one hole in Baltimore's entire unit at the moment, and I just don't know if Buffalo have, the weapons to exploit it. So let's look at Baltimore. They've got the number 2 ranked passing offense, the number 1 ranked rushing offense, the number 2 ranked passing defense. Here's the issue: is that their rushing defense against the run is ranked number 25 in the NFL. Bills, rushing backs they're not going to scare Baltimore. You've got Frank Gore, who's a legend, but he's not going to scare Baltimore. Devin Singletary, the rookie, he's also playing quite well, but he's not going to create nightmares for Baltimore. That's not to say that they can't score, but I still think 43 seems a really soft total for the best offense in football against a defense that, it is rated highly, and we've talked about them a number of times as well. But I do feel like they're a little overrated. They've had a really soft schedule to date, and they haven't really had to keep out really good offenses. So I'm looking at the overs here as well.
You think Ravens have proven themselves as the best team in football over the last couple of months? You don't win 8 in a row by mistake, and they've beaten really good teams in the process too. There's a temptation to take Buffalo as a home dog with 5.5 points, especially considering this is a playoff-bound team. Yet at the same time, can anybody keep up with that kind of Baltimore offense at the moment, which is the best in DVOA? This Buffalo offense is ranked 19th. That's worse than the Chargers, Detroit, Cleveland Browns. So if it gets into that kind of match, they're gone. Love that stat, Nick, in terms of rush defense with Baltimore. And I'm thinking, come playoff time, who's going to exploit that? Patriots? Probably not. Chiefs haven't got an amazing running game. Tennessee, and we'll come to that a little bit later if they were to get in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, that comes up later as a tip. But anyway, yeah, it's a pass for me on that particular game though, because slight lean Baltimore, but it's going to be a ripper.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention Buffalo, 22nd in run DVOA defense. So it just plays right into their hands. Lamar, I think he needs only like 10 or so more yards to crack 1,000 for the season on the ground, which he'll certainly get in that game and continue his MVP march. I'm just glad he survived the 49ers game, my baby bear. Big trust. All right, Carolina at Atlanta. Atlanta -3. The total is 47. Pass for me. I don't want to watch this one at all. It's gross. I think both these teams' off seasons will be more fascinating to watch, as James mentioned a little bit earlier. So I'm going to pass there. Do you agree, James?
Yeah, Hooper out, Julio Jones out. Tough evaluation. Pass for me.
Yeah, look, it's a really tough game to evaluate, as you said, just because both teams are so ridiculously inconsistent. I still want to watch it though. I still think it'll be entertaining, but yeah, no bet from me in this one.
I don't know. I just can't do it. Cincinnati, I'm done with Kyle Allen. I'm done with him. I'm done. Please. Can you imagine going into the season next year with him and letting Cam Newton go? Oh, man. Big decisions I can see them doing it, but crazy.
But we're going to hear one more time that Dave Tepper, the owner, is this analytics forward-thinking guy. He's going to save everything. He's going to solve every problem that ever existed.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Cincinnati at Cleveland. Cleveland -8.5. The total is 40.5. Let's start with James here. What are your thoughts on this one?
I actually really like Cincy. Got their first win last week, obviously. Probably still, maybe the worst team in football. Maybe Washington and the Giants could argue with that mantle. But it's not like they are the worst by any significant margin. And it's not as though they stand out in any particular area for being absolutely revolting. I mean, they're 28th or 27th in both defense and offensive efficiency. So they're bad, but not horrendous. At the same time, anybody comfortable taking the Browns to cover 8.5 points? This is a team that has scored 23 or less in 9 of their 12 matches this year. So it's not as though they just get going at this beautiful, efficient offense. They're a bit of a train wreck, as we've seen. So I think that sort of 8.5 stays open all game, to be honest. So Cincy for me. Yeah,
I'm going to agree with you. I like Cincy plus 8.5 as well. Cincy have covered 9 of their last 12 games of underdogs of 8 points or more. I think the improved play of their Bengals defense is kind of flying under the radar. So the Jets had scored at least 34 points in 3 consecutive games before being limited to just 6 by the Bengals, who are actually averaging 13 points against in their last 3 games. They're also only 11th in their last 3 games in yards per play allowed. So they actually just kind of just tune things up a little bit, and they're starting to play a little bit tougher, play a little bit harder. And look, Mayfield was just 8 of 15 for 98 yards in an interception after hitting his throwing hand on the face mask of Bud Dupree there in that game. And he still played with that protective glove, but it's still sore. And Mayfield's kind of, trying to prove that he's not a wuss. He said something today that his mum didn't raise a wuss. So he'll play even if his hand's hurting. And I just think this is a perfect spot for the Bengals here to win. They're 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 games against the Browns. So yeah, I like Cincy plus 8.5. Might even have a little something on the Bengals money line like I did last week against the Jets here. And Andy Dalton, I love the Red Rifle. He's an interesting free agent next year. I mean, I wouldn't say no to him in Indy with good coaching and good line. We've seen him play well when the surrounding environment is decent. I just think maybe he gives him another chance in a different environment. Why not? Why not give that a go while you draft or find your next quarterback? Have we got a lock, Nick? Are we all on board here on the Cincy train?
Oh, look, we're not far off. We're not far off, but it's not a lock. I completely understand why both of you guys and why anyone would have an issue with taking Cleveland and would prefer to take the points with Cincinnati here. But I think Cleveland just have so much more to play for. They need this win. They were beaten last week by a defense that is just so much better than their offense has played in Pittsburgh. But Cincinnati don't have that. And I know you talked about they're
not the Steelers
improved defense, but it's still not good. They're ranked 27th in the NFL on run defense, and that's kind of where Cleveland are going. They've got the NFL's rushing leader in Nick Chubb, who I really like, and there's a play there. I don't like the main markets here. I think that line is pretty good. I think Cleveland win. I'm not confident on the 8.5. I think Cleveland win, but I do like Nick Chubb, $1.90 for 100 plus rushing yards. Like I said, the Cincy run defense ranked 27th in the league, and you got to. Nick Chubb had a down week last week. I think you got to gobble that up. 100 yards, $1.90.
Okay. I like it. I don't mind it. Kareem Hunt lurking, but they've been using him more as a receiver. So, that is, he still actually had a few rushes, but I think he only had like 20% of the snaps. So,
yeah, I think it's more just to give him a breather.
Yeah. All right. Denver at Houston. Houston minus 9.5. The total is 41. I'm leaning towards Denver at the plus 10 if it gets back out there. But at the 9 or 9.5 where it is now, I'll pass. This is a big letdown spot though for the Texans after the high of beating the Patriots. I really thought they were going to get their butts kicked when they rocked up in that SWAT gear. The linebackers, I just thought this is a recipe for embarrassment, but credit to them, they won. But Denver's still playing hard for their first year head coach Fangio. They beat the Chargers last week. They're 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games. And while the Texans, continue to be great, they're really so much better when they're the underdogs. So they're 7-2-1 against the spread in their last 10 games as underdogs. But as a favorite, they're so unreliable. They're 2-6-1 against the spread in their last 9 games as chalk, 5-10 against the spread in their last 15 games of home favorites, and 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 when favored by more than a touchdown. I can't trust Bill O'Brien to cover what's close to a near double-digit spread. I'm going to pass. As good as he's been a little bit better, and maybe it is time to eat crow on Houston, I'm going to wait. They still play Tennessee twice down the stretch, so I'm hitching my wagon to Ryan Tannehill and hoping he just destroys the Texans so I don't have to eat crow. But yeah, I'm going to pass on this. What have you got, Nick?
It's a really interesting one. I don't think any of us saw kind of the Texans offense doing what they did to the Patriots last week. Deshaun Watson back to MVP conversation again. It was, it's 2 weeks in a row that he's played really good football. And I don't think that the Denver defense is as rated highly as they are, and they are a very good defense that, ranked 8th in the league. I don't think the Denver defense will scare Houston based on what they did last week. But like you said, that 9.5 is a massive line. And I'm not confident either side. Interestingly, I like Deshaun Watson, 285 plus passing yards at $2.40. Denver do have a really good defensive unit. They're against the pass. They're only ranked 17th. And Houston are ranked 7th in passing offense. So there should be some room for Deshaun Watson to sling it around. You've got Hopkins and Fuller if he plays, Kenny Stills, Darren Fells. There's a lot of options there on that Texans passing offense. And I think that Watson's just rounding into some end of season form where he might sneakily want that MVP.
That was a huge win by Houston last week, especially coupled with, going into Kansas early in the year, nearly beating New Orleans in the first game of the year in the Superdome as well. They're good. They're obviously a playoff team. It's just a matter of how far they can go once in the playoffs, which hasn't been a really good thing for Houston under Bill O'Brien. They sort of have a big face plant there every year. So it comes down to what we think of the actual line. And when assessing this line, Denver are a 7-5 ATS on the season, which is the same record as KC, New England and Seattle. So they're that kind of team against market expectations. Denver D is still good. We know how good Houston is, and it's just a matter of 9.5 to 10. It's going to be open, I think, for a fair bit of the game. They went into Minnesota a couple of weeks and were up 20 zip at halftime, weren't they? Or something like that. Mm. So I think it's going to be there, that covering opportunity. That's the kind of team Denver are this season. Nothing special. Everybody's kind of lost interest or not very energized by what they're bringing on offense, but they find a way to just claw their way and often beat the spread. But they're not a good team. It's about whether they can get this line, which I think they can. And I like what Josh said, would probably prefer it 10-10.5. Would definitely prefer it 10-10.5.
Definitely. I very much look forward to Houston losing on a Saturday afternoon, first round of the playoffs. A tradition like any other, really. Every year.
Shakies match.
It's awesome. Detroit at Minnesota. Minnesota minus 13 at home. The total is 43.5. This is a pass for me. This is crazy, and this is Matthew Edward Patricia. The Lions are one of just 3 teams in the NFL who have led in every single game they've played this season. San Francisco are 10-2 straight up. The Chiefs are 8-4 straight up. The Lions are 3-8-1 straight up and 5-7 against the spread. Isn't that just infuriating? It's infuriating.
It is absolutely amazing.
And
that's an amazing stat.
Undrafted rookie quarterback David Blau. He played pretty good last week in his NFL debut in Thanksgiving in a big spot against a pretty good defense in Chicago. I need to see a little bit more before I trust him on the road against a good Vikings team and a good Vikings. Not a great Vikings defense, but a solid Vikings defense, I'll say there. This is a great spot for the Vikings at home against a bad team. This is normally the game where Kirk Cousins makes people believe in him for the 273rd time. Only for him to then throw it all away the following week in prime time. So I'm going to pass. 13 is a lot. If I was going to pick a side, I'd probably lean to Detroit covering. But yeah, I'm going to pass on this. I'm not touching or betting against Minnesota at home, especially at that number. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, I'm same but different. I'm also a pass. I've got to lean to Minnesota. If I was going to take one, I'd probably take Minnesota. Yeah, as good as they are at home, and we know how good they are at home, 13 is just too big. They've got question marks around Diggs and Dalvin Cook, a bit banged up last week. And they'll probably both play, but how healthy are they going to be? Are they not going to be 100%? So like I said, I kind of lean to them at home, but no, it's probably a pass for me. How about you, James?
Yeah, 13 seems way too high for the Lions. I think the Vikings are starting to sort of look a little bit odd, particularly on defense. They got shredded a few times in that secondary, which is their big concern. The only trepidation, and we've spoken about it a few times this season, is Minnesota are a machine covering as home favourites. And they've done so at a 67% rate over the last 5 seasons. And it's only one team who's better than that in the NFL, and that's the Patriots in that time span. So Vikings at home is a tough proposition, but hey, that was the same thing again a couple of weeks ago against Denver, and Denver got the marbles there against the spread, and probably thinking similar philosophy with Detroit. So Detroit plus 13 for me.
Okay, let's move on. Indianapolis at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay minus 3. Total is 46.5. It's a pass for me. Jacoby Brissett's kind of revealed himself to be what he really is over the last 6 weeks. It's been pretty awful. But I'll give him some credit and say that, you know, any quarterback missing 5 of their top targets heading into the season is going to struggle. We're missing T.Y. Hilton, Marlon Mack, Devin Funchess, Paris Campbell, and Eric Ebron, and I think we're missing Chester Rogers as well. So that's probably 6. He's throwing to Zach Pascal, Jack Doyle, Marcus Johnson, and a guy called Ashton Julian from like some college that no one's ever heard of. So it's tough for Jacoby Brissett, but he needs to be better deep and be better at reading the field. Reading the defense down the field, and it's where he's kind of struggled it, and where teams have taken us on a little bit. But he's not been the only reason. Adam Vinatieri's been awful. I mean, how is he not in the glue factory already? I do not know. He's done. But look, we're a run first team. I mean, now we face Tampa Bay, who are awesome at stopping the run. So I've got nothing here. But how can you trust Tampa Bay? I mean, they do it so often. Winston's been good the last 2 weeks, so we're probably due like a bad Winston game. I don't know. It's a pass for me. If I had to lean, probably Tampa Bay at home, but I'm gonna pass on that.
There's not much to like about this matchup at all. I can't take either of these sides with any confidence whatsoever. So complete pass from me. I don't even want to watch it, to be honest. But yeah, James, you might have something different to say.
Yeah, actually, I quite like Tampa here. They're in season best form. They've won 3 of their last 4. And India in season worst form, like absolutely in season worst form. This is at the same time, it's a, non-negotiable must-win for the Colts if they've got any postseason aspirations whatsoever. However, they're a completely different team without Mack in the team. He's been responsible for a quarter of their entire yards from scrimmage this season and has 500 more than anyone else on the team, which touches upon Josh's mention of the lack of weapons with the Colts. So, and he's been absolute. So absolutely pivotal in a season of transition and injuries in Indiana. Tampa quietly a top 10 defense under Todd Bowles this season. They're 5-7, which isn't an ugly mark. And at least they're sort of playing. I know Winston can absolutely infuriate people. He's thrown 20 picks this season. Yet it still is a lights out kind of offense with Evans and Godwin. They can throw it down the field. At least they're built to complement what the quarterback does. And with the defense the way it is, don't mind Tampa. All of a sudden, Tampa 6-7, and this whole sort of new era in Florida is looking a little bit better. So yeah, Tampa for me.
I don't know if it's hard. Winston has these games where he will play lights out. Like he has these amazing games where you're like, God, like if you could get 16 games of that, they win 10 games. You know, it's like it's frustrating. And then he has these picks that are just mind-numbingly dumb, and it's like, it's so infuriating. But I this opened 50.5, and I hit the under straight away because I think Tampa, you're right, top 10 D quietly. India actually quite stout on D, and the way that they play slows down the game a lot, so you don't have as many scoring opportunities. I mean, Tennessee got like most of their points really late in that game with the blocked kick return and things like that. So India 14th in DVOA defense, Tampa Bay at 10th. 9th in DVOA defense. The Colts' young secondary is actually playing really well. So if anyone can maybe throw Winston off their game a little bit early, that's an avenue to victory. But yeah, I'd probably agree that Tampa Bay are rolling. I don't know if they stick with Winston though next year. I'm not sure. They need to finish the month strong. I think that's probably where you're at. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I was going to say in a sort of competition of ordinary quarterbacks, is it okay being maybe just a fraction above ordinary? Half the league would probably accept Winston as their quarterback. Colts certainly would at the moment.
Yeah.
I know it's not great, but still, if you can work with a really good coordinator, you can get it done.
I can cop interceptions. I'm fine with a quarterback taking risks and throwing down the field and throwing the occasional pick, but he has some really bad turnovers that are really kind of really put you in a hole.
I reckon he'd be much better at the Colts, to be honest, with the offensive line, and he's the most sacked quarterback in the league this season by a long way.
It's crazy. Well, we'll see. They need to win this game and turn things around. Miami at the Jets. The Jets -5. The total is 45. I'm going to go to James first here and see what he has.
Yeah, Dolphins have covered 6 of their last 8 matches, and Jets on the road while getting 5 points, for me, seems quite doable. Dolphins' massive weakness is their D. It's the worst in the entire NFL. At the same time, are the Jets the kind of team who's going to exploit that? They've got the very worst attack in the league. So +5 for the Dolphins. Probably it's going to be freezing cold. That's my only sort of issue. Dolphins traveling up there for that. But yeah, don't mind the Dolphins at +5.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you. I think the Jets, on their numbers, they look like bad, but a lot of that was like the early Dalton, Luke Falk. And I think over the last few weeks, they scored 34 in back-to-back games, the Jets. I don't know if they're that bad on defense. I feel like they kind of read into a buzzsaw last week where since you were always going to win that game, they needed to get off the schneid. They probably circled that in the calendar. They brought back Andy Dalton specially for it. I don't know. I feel like this... and I mentioned the improved Cincinnati defense. Like, that kind of hurt them as well. I think, the Dolphins, they've covered 3 of their last 4 road games, and this is the first time they're not double-digit dog away from home this year. And that's why I'm going to take the Jets because, how many games have we had Miami close to a field goal, as opposed to 10 points? Back at home, after the letdown spot for Miami, after their huge win against the Eagles at home and that cool... whatever play they called it, I can't even remember now, but the punter throwing it to the kicker or vice versa. Yeah, so that was awesome, but the Jets will be ready. I like the Jets to win and cover. I know everyone's going to be picking Miami this week because of that, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit on that train. I'm with James in this one.
Back against the wall.
I know the Eagles were bad last week, and we've touched on a number of times the Eagles secondary, but I don't think that takes anything away from Miami last week. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw for 360 yards, 3 touchdowns. Devontae Parker is one of the hottest receivers in football at the moment, and he's coming up a really soft pass defense with the Jets that are ranked 22nd in that category. And just for reference, the Eagles, while we've talked about them having a soft secondary, they're ranked 13th in pass defense. So that's actually not that bad. I think Miami are a sneaky here. I'm going to take the points with Miami +5. and probably even have a little play on the money line. But I also think, mentioning the Jets' soft pass defense, Fitzmagic, can he back it up? 295 plus passing yards at $2.40 might be worth a nibble. And if you're playing DFS, might be a worthy pay down at quarterback. If Lamar and Deshaun scare you against the Buffalo and Denver defenses.
Yeah, pair him with Devontae Parker, who suddenly has earned himself a lot of money over the last couple of weeks.
I've got him in 2 out of my 3 fantasy leagues. Picked him up off the waiver wire about 5 weeks ago.
Yeah, amazing.
And he has just been lights out, and he might win me those 2 leagues.
Yeah, it's crazy. And this is a revenge spot for Ryan. I feel like every week's a revenge game for Ryan Fitzpatrick.
He's played for about 47 franchises.
I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer or whatever, but he's just had one of the greatest careers of all time. I just feel like his career is just so memorable. He's just played for 25 different teams, and he has these such memorable moments. You can't really tell the story of the NFL without mentioning Ryan Fitzpatrick. We'll forget a lot of other quarterbacks, but Ryan Fitzpatrick is just, he's hung around for near 20 years now. It's ridiculous.
Well, now that you mention it, I mean, after about, week 8 or so, I think you said that Gardner Minshew was probably this podcast spirit animal. Yeah. I reckon Fitzmagic is the spirit animal for this podcast.
But I'm picking against it this week.
Have a play.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Minshew's back, so I'm shelving Fitzpatrick this week. Back. But I agree. But I just feel like the Jets will turn it around. That was such a Jets game last week. Everyone was excited about them. They scored 34 3 weeks in a row, and everyone was excited about them, and they tear you apart, and now everyone's down on them again, and they'll probably come out and win. Just feels like the Jets just do that all the time.
Big shout out to Miami, though. They're well ahead of the pack. They've got their whole sort of franchise set up. They've had great coaching this year and a ton of draft picks coming through. This is what a lot of these failing teams should have been doing 6 or 8 weeks ago.
You got to hit on those picks, though. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, you do. But they've also been sort of aided by, they've won and sort of got some confidence out of that. With that draft order now, it's in chaos. I mean, with all the Tua stuff, now Chase Young's come right in. Burrow, if you want him, but he's about 33 years old. So it's kind of like, which way do you want to go?
I think Lamar Jackson's younger than Joe Burrow or something. I can't even remember the stat.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
The fact that Miami, apparently their roster against the Eagles last week, 42% of their roster went undrafted, and they beat the Eagles, who on paper had,
that is amazing.
5 all-pro players, pro bowlers across the board. The fact they won a game, the NFL is just amazing.
Yeah. By the way, the conversation for number 1 draft pick is over. It's Dane Roy, everybody.
It is
Dane Roy.
Dan Roy. You can get some close to $2 on Joe Burrow out there, just quietly shop around.
And remember as well, we've seen everybody gets really crazy about quarterbacks late in the process, and guys go up about 15 spots than what they're supposed to.
If you're picking the best player in college football, you pick Chase Young, but
that's what everybody says, isn't it? Yeah, that's what they all say.
That's what they do. You don't tank for a defensive lineman. That's all I'll say. San Fran, here we go, from one blockbuster to another. San Fran at New Orleans. New Orleans at home, -2.5. The total is 44.5. Initially had San Fran +3 as a play. It's moved to 2.5, so I'm out. I'm out on this. But I think the 49ers are the better team. I have them rated higher. I think they're a better team. But at home here, New Orleans, great home field advantage. San Fran coming out, traveling down after that rainy, windy affair. I just don't know. I'm gonna bow out and just enjoy watching it. But as we saw, though, defense travels, and the 49ers have one of the best ones in the NFL. I think they can cover the +3 in that tough environment. But the 2.5, as I said, I'm gonna bow out. But look, the Saints, I don't know where I am about them. The Breeze isn't the same Breeze. I feel like he's throwing a lot shorter passes. He's barely taking shots down the field. I want to see a little bit more arm strength from him. And as we saw against the Falcons a couple of weeks ago, the pass rush really stifled the Saints, and that's what the 49ers do really, really well. So I think the 49ers pass rush and the 49ers secondary should have match up pretty well here. So I kind of like San Fran at the 2.5. I'd rather probably take a dabble on the money line instead, and roll the dice that way. But I need to wait and see the ins and outs. I need to see if Marshawn Lattimore plays, because I think he's a big in for the Saints.
I think you can still get 3. If you shop around, you can still get 3 at a couple of places. So just keep an eye out, and that might fluctuate a little bit over the next couple of days as well.
Yep.
Might be at 2.5, and it'll come back to 3 and come back.
It just depends where the sharps go, really.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those lines that's going to be up and down. pretty much until kickoff. And look, I know they lost last week, but this is how good the San Francisco defense is. The Niners kept the Ravens, the NFL's number one ranked offense, to their lowest score of the season last week of 20 points. They're a really, really good defense. And quietly, the Saints have a really good defense too. I think they're ranked fifth or something for weighted DVOA. For new listeners, that's for defensive DVOA, kind of weighted to the more recent performances, so games earlier in the season, and not counted as heavily as the more recent performances. And they're top 10 against both pass rush and blocking the run. I like the Niners to cover, like you said, at the 3. Probably still play around with that 2.5, but if you can get 3, take it. Yep. And I really like the unders play here as well. Both really good defenses. And I think it might even have a double at the double, which I haven't done for a couple of weeks.
Ooh, love it.
Really like this game, to be honest. Like, this is just about my game of the week, because whichever way it's going to happen, we're going to get heaps revealed about 2 major contenders, and it might even have a massive say on the number 1 seed in the NFC come the end of the season. Big thing for me is going to come down to the offensive line with New Orleans. They're starting a rookie center, as we know. 2 of their best linemen, Armstead and Peter, both out, and they're up against the best defensive line in the NFL, like a menacing defensive line. Saints are 10-2 on the season, which is great, fantastic. It's an equal best record in the NFL, but they've only come up against 1 top 10 defense so far, and that was Tampa, who were barely in the top 10, and they only just got home by 7 points in that game. So my lean for here is San Francisco. I think they can get the cover. But a huge opportunity for the Saints, because I agree with Josh as well with Breeze. They don't have that same sort of unstoppable feel about how they kind of emerged last year, just narrowly missing out on a Super Bowl appearance. Don't seem as good. Kamara certainly doesn't seem as good. The only person on offense who seems better is Michael Thomas, who's emerged as the best receiver in the NFL.
Very good in the bedroom, allegedly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we learned that last week, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah, so 49ers for me. And they are losers of 2 of their last 4 games. So also I want to pump the brakes on this 49ers team as well. So
they don't deserve to miss out on a bye. Like if the Seahawks end up sniping them for the bye, I feel like San Fran have played a much tougher schedule from mine.
Yeah, but if Seattle beat them twice though, and gave them a start, as we know, so Seattle would deserve it.
Yeah, if Seattle do beat them coming up, then that's fair. But if they, have to play the Ravens and then the Saints in back-to-back weeks, it's just seems just unfair, really. But that's the way the cookie crumbles.
And that makes for that Week 17 match. Yeah. Just enormous.
Yeah. Oh, mate, imagine being like a wild card team and having to play the 49ers at like 11-4 49ers or 11-5, whatever it is.
That would be Dallas potentially. Yeah, it would be Dallas, San Fran in Dallas. So.
Yeah.
Or Washington.
Maybe.
Or Washington.
Imagine having a 20-point line in a playoff game. God, yes. That'd be insane. Anyway, speaking of Washington at Green Bay. Green Bay minus 13. I'll just double check that hasn't moved anywhere. But yeah, minus 13. The total is 41.5. It's a pass from me. Look, the Packers beat up on bad teams. We saw it last week in the snow against the Giants. We'll probably see it again this week. I'm not taking the 13 here, though, however, because the Packers' biggest weakness matches up to what Bill Callahan and the Redskins love to do the most. That's run the football and, more importantly, run the clock. And so 13 is a big line when the Redskins are going to be running the ball, playing possession football. I think the Packers win, but Packers are 28th in run DVOA defense. I think we could see another 200-plus performance from Geis and Adrian Peterson. I'm really happy for Darius Geis having that breakout game last week. Seems like a great guy given all the kind of false rumors that surrounded him heading into the draft that saw his stock fall a little bit, and the injuries he's been through. So, good guy, Geis. See how he plays this week, but I'm pass from me. What are your thoughts, Nick?
That's some nice alliteration there from you. Good guy, Geis.
Yeah,
I don't mind it. So that should probably be it should probably be a Twitter handle for someone. I think the Packers will win, and I think they're going to win this easily. Like you said, they do beat up on bad teams. They're at home. Packers are top 10 in both pass and run offense. The Skins are pretty much the opposite in both on defense. I think they're 20th against the run and 19th against the pass. At Lambeau, I think this 13-point line is justified. They're again, it's such a different team at home, and they know their home field. They're comfortable. I feel like the Redskins had their kind of, like you said, for Geis, the kind of breakout performance last week or unexpected performance last week in Charlotte. But I think the 9-3 Packers will be too much for them at Lambeau. I'm going to have a little play on the Packers line, -13.
This game really reminds me of last week's KC Oakland game, which we all correctly forecast would be an utter demolition. And unfortunately, we didn't have that as our lock of the week. In terms of a clearly competent Packers team coming up against the Washington offense, which is the definitive worst in the league. It's going to be cold. It's going to be awful in Lambeau. I can hardly see Washington scoring, and we know Rodgers and co can get some points up on the board. So, and Packers have got much bigger fish to fry. They've still got a division title to be winning with Minnesota breathing down their neck. So Packers to cover that 13-point line for me.
Okay, interesting. If Washington win this game, I'm going to go back and clip the soundbite that you just said. Utter demolition. Just for a bit of fun. Although if we did that for everything I said, then we'd be here all day. Okay.
But I was referring to the Chiefs one.
Yeah. But do you foresee utter demolition in this one?
Absolutely, yeah.
There we go. Gotcha. Got him. Hook, line, and sinker. No, the Chargers -3 at Jacksonville. The total is 43. I lean over 43. I kind of lean Jags +3, but I'm going to probably avoid. I'm just stick to total. Minshew mania, baby. He's back. The Jaguars seem to play more inspired football when Minshew's at the helm. He just so much more creative, keeps plays alive, keeps things going, keeps the chains moving. I like the Chargers with Foles, but with Minshew, it's probably a pass. I'm expecting points. Both teams are 23 and 24th on DVOA defense. Both teams rank better offensively. The Jags rating is probably dragged down a lot by the Foles games in terms of their offensive DVOA. I think they're sitting pretty well, kind of like league average when Minshew was at the helm. So I think their rating on offense is a little bit improved here with Minshew. So I like the over 43 here. Any thoughts on this, guys?
I hate this game completely, and I hate the fact that they've benched the greatest quarterback of all time, BDN. Look, I really like Nick Foles. I just think I don't know why they paid him this money because he's the wrong quarterback for this team. But no, complete pass for me.
Yeah, worst game of the week, pass for me.
Okay. Foles should return to Philly and replace the overrated QB at the helm of the Eagles. I'm kidding.
Foles should go to Dallas and be the head coach.
Foles should go to Indy and reunite with Frank Reich, maybe.
Yeah, potentially.
Foles should be paid what he's worth, not 25, exactly. Not 25, whatever they pay. 25 million, I think the cap hit for next season is. It's the cheap one this season.
He's paid per inch, so it seems fine.
$1 billion.
He's paid per inch, so it makes sense. BDN. KC at New England. New England -3. The total is 48.5. This is a pass from me. I'm finding it really difficult to rate the Patriots offense in my ratings. So since week 4, Tom Brady's completion percentage, touchdown to interception ratio, QBR, and yards per attempt are worse than Trubisky. But when you look at that name and I do my rating, the name there is Tom Brady. And he's Tom Brady. So if I rated Tom Brady the same as I did Trubisky in my ratings, then both these teams would be almost identical. And then you obviously give the small nod to New England for home field advantage here. But because I haven't rated him that way, my numbers love New England, but I just can't trust myself to do it because I don't know whether that inherent name bias is affecting my ratings there. So it's really hard to do things. They should turn things around on offense. They're too good of a team in an organization not to turn things around. They're just too good. And this is historically a spot where chips against the wall, everyone's down on New England that they come out and just beat a contender and cover a small line where they probably should be a lot higher than they are, but because of the last week and the recency bias, they're not. And KC's win last week was really weird. I don't know. It's weird. It's like they never ever looked like losing, never ever looked in danger. But if you look at the box score, they were outgained. It was hardly impressive. There was no amazing stats. They just destroyed Oakland really. Like if they were a plane, they kind of never left the tarmac, but still got to their destination, but still won by 30-something points. So if they actually take flight and reach their potential, then they probably could hammer the Pats. But I don't know. I'll say this, at least D Ford isn't here to ruin this one and gift Brady another Super Bowl. So that's a positive. James, thoughts?
Yeah, Chiefs are obviously have a significantly better offense than the Pats, which you touched upon, Josh. The lack of skill players throughout this Patriots team, the lack of dynamic plays full stop, either from Sony Michel either, is really sort of hamstringing them, making me really worry about them as a long-term proposition. Chiefs, they're in form, and they're rounding into something like we saw from them last season, which nearly knocked the Patriots out of the AFC Conference Championship. We shouldn't forget how close that game was. All the historical trends point to the Patriots, be it Belichick versus Reed, Pat's post-loss, or Pat's as home favourites. They're all pointing New England, but the form is so much on the Chiefs at the moment. So for me, it's a lean, and I get the points as well at +3. So Chiefs for me.
Yeah, like you said, James, all those trends and the numbers kind of favour the Pats, whichever way you look at it, because, you know, they're the Pats and they've got this history, and it's Belichick and it's Brady, and, you know, there's some of that name recognition, like you said, Josh. But you try and look at it logically in the form and use some reason, then the head says Chiefs. So I can't work out.
No, but it's Belichick.
Where to play this game. Exactly.
And he lives in our heads.
He's the biggest. He lives in coaches' head. This is why they make foolish decisions in Super Bowls and things in games, and they blow games because he gets inside people's heads.
And guys, we see this. Sorry to jump over you, Nick, but we see this every year with the Patriots, don't we? We have these December losses or October loss or wherever it is, where it was Detroit destroying them last year. Miami often beat them in December every year, it seems.
Yep.
So this is Belichick messing with us as well, but there are massive concerns. Sorry, Nick.
No, you're right. It's like I said, I just don't know how to play this game. It's a pass for me.
Yeah. And the Pats love doing this and turning the narrative around, and then they make it like they're the underdogs and everyone doubted them, and it's like, Jesus.
And let's not forget how amazing that defense is as well. You know, that's the kind of defense that can just quickly turn you over and put 7 points on the board and keep you under all that pressure. So I'm not going to write them off, but at the same time, I'm the same as you guys. My head is saying, they're 250 or 270 to win the AFC, which seems the biggest under in gambling at the moment. You know what I mean? Like, you'd lay that all day, but
it's Belichick, so I don't know.
That's right. I know. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Can we also stop making excuses for Brady? Everyone's blaming everyone but him. Like, but he's just not throwing the ball.
No, he's not Tom Brady. He's Tom Brady, but he's not Tom Brady.
He's slightly declining. That's not to say he won't be good in January again, but like, he's whiffed on throws and missed wide open play. If you watch their games, a lot of their big plays are when Edelman's wide open. The minute he has to thread a needle pass, it's the receiver's fault or it's the offensive line's fault. Like that, every quarterback goes through that, but we seem to make a lot of excuses for the guy. It just seems crazy to me.
It's kind of sacrilegious, but let's say it. Like, he looks terrible. Yeah. Like, he really looks terrible.
He's been below average this year, pretty much. Yeah. But because they've been winning, no one's talking about it. Now that they've losing games, everyone's blaming they drafted N'Keal Harry, they've got Philip Dorsett, a first round pick. They've traded for Mohamed Sanu. They've got Edelman there that everyone was pushing to be a Hall of Famer this time last year. Like, they have players. It's not like, yes, they're missing Gronk, clearly. Gronk's the greatest tight end of all time. That's massive. But they still have players. It's not like don't have players. It's a great system. Like, they had the same offense for 10 years. Things should be working, and they'll click into gear. You just know they will.
Yeah, but coming up against the Chiefs, though, is at the same time, probably the last Mahomes is probably the last, and Reed for that matter, but more so Mahomes. It's the last person you want to be facing. I kind of, as I've touched upon as well, I do like the way the Chiefs are going under the radar. I know even you referenced that before with the yardage and stuff like that, but I'd prefer that kind of win by the Chiefs than us all going crazy. Oh my God, they went for 600 yards. Oh my God, Patrick Mahomes threw 7
It's
touchdowns.
Good for them to win and not rely on Mahomes for a change.
Absolutely, getting those big defensive plays and getting that defense off the field. No, I liked it.
Yeah, and their pass defense is playing. Their pass defense is playing really well at the moment. They're playing really well. Juan Thornhill, their draft pick, had a pick 6 last week. It's coming into gear. It's good for them to actually have a secondary for the first time in Mahomes' career.
And this is where seeding's going to come into it. You know, are they going to get a 3? Could they snatch a 2?
This is massive. I mean, if New England lose this and Baltimore win, there's a definitive gap there's a 1.5 game gap between the Ravens and New England.
Exactly, would be over.
It's huge. And KC have a chance to potentially get a.
Well, they'd be within a game, wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. So who knows?
With the tiebreaker, obviously.
Yeah. All right, Pittsburgh -2.5. Travel to Arizona. The total is 43. There's a lot of 43 totals this week. It's very strange. 43.5. I lean Arizona +3. I'm just going to throw last week's beat down by the Rams kind of out the window. Chalk it up to it's the NFL and that stuff happens. Off a bye, sometimes teams really take off. Some teams are really lethargic. The bye came at the wrong time. But before last week, Arizona in their 3 prior games put up 25, 26, and 27 points. And they played San Fran in that stretch and played well against San Fran twice. Pittsburgh's been hanging tough in games, but they're still 28th in the league in total offense. They scored just 60 total points in their last 4 games. So I actually think Arizona will be able to put some points up here and maybe get enough to cover here. I think you score 17 points, you're probably going to cover a +3. If you can get the +3, I think it's still hovering around 2.5. But Arizona 3-1 against the spread against the spread loss. I think they can potentially steal this game. I might even dabble at the money line, but I like them at the +3 if it gets back out to that.
Yeah, I was pretty bullish on the Cars last week, and they got absolutely smacked.
Yeah.
By the Rams. It was I was excited to watch that game, and it wasn't much to watch in the end, but
disappointing.
It was disappointing. Obviously, the Pittsburgh offense is not the same, that we've come to know and love in some cases. Some people hate the Steelers, but I used to love watching the Steelers offense just because they were so good.
Oh yeah, man, Big Ben and Brown and Bell and all that
incredible to watch. Yeah. But then, this is not them, right? So on the other hand, the Pittsburgh defense is really good, and I can't go back to the Cards, so it's a pass for me.
Yeah, I don't think there's been a sort of analysis or estimation the Steelers has ever matched up. So this is not going to be the week for me, but a little shout out to Mike Tomlin for potential coach of the year. He's got to be in that top 3 at the moment for sure. Oh. Amazing job. He really has an amazing job.
He was in the hot seat this time last year, so
still can't stand him.
I don't know. He talks in so much cliche, it just drives me mental. But yeah, John Harbaugh is coach of the year for me. But I get it. I get
that's why I say top 3.
Yeah.
He's done an amazing job.
Yep, definitely. I couldn't agree there. I couldn't agree more there. He has done a hell of a job considering what they lost before the season and during the season. It's crazy. And the trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick, I don't know who led that. But that was one of the great ones.
Stroke of genius.
Yeah, it was. Tennessee -3.5, -3, at Oakland. Total is 47 here. I'm going to pass. These two teams are going in opposite directions at the moment. It's a trap game of the week. This is definitely a trap game of the week. Titans are 5-1 straight up since Ryan Tannehill replaced Mariota at quarterback, nearly averaging twice as many points per game across that span. 29.7 with Tannehill, 16.3 under Mariota. Over the last couple of weeks, Oakland have been outscored 74-12 over the last 2 weeks to the Jets and Chiefs, and they've been their own worst enemy during that stretch. They've lost a turnover battle 5-1, and they've given up more touchdowns on offense to the actual offensive touchdowns that they've scored. 1. Every man and his dog is going to be on Tennessee -3 this week on the road at Oakland. This is a trap game of the week. And Oakland have been, as I said, outscored 74-12 since Nick and James apologized to John Gruden.
I know. Can you believe it?
I do like Derrick Henry to have a big game. Maybe that could be a lock of the week avenue if you guys agree. I know Nick's bullish on him this week, Nick.
Yeah, I love Derrick Henry. We spoke a little while ago about Devontae Parker being one of the hottest wide receivers in the league. Derrick Henry is the hottest running back in the league at the moment. The last 3 weeks, he's got 496 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns, an average of 165 yards and 1.7 touchdowns a game. I don't see, obviously you've done it, but I can't see how you bet against Tennessee here. And, Oakland are ranked 26th against the run. So they've got the best running back in the league at the moment. Well, maybe not the best, but the hottest. He's in form.
He's sexy.
I'm not sure about the hair.
You keep calling him hot.
Well, look, that's where your mind goes. It's fine.
It's fine. You say hot, I go hot.
George Costanza, not that there's anything wrong with that, but look, I agree. I think Derrick Henry have a big game. I've got him at 250 for 119 or more rushing yards, which I think is very juicy.
Love the Titans here. This Raiders D is a unit which only Miami is faring worse on. So we're talking about the 31st ranked DVOA defense in the competition right here. This Titans team has quietly emerged and been a real force and a sort of, about to bust into the playoffs and break that kind of 9-7, chain that has sort of carried around their necks. Now, interestingly though, the thought did just jump into me. And as Josh alluded to as well, I know everybody, the consensus is Tennessee, jump on board. This isn't a nuanced offense, okay? And we've spoken before again on this podcast. That's what Gruden has thrived against. He doesn't like anything different. Where if it's a meat and potatoes offense, maybe Gruden can handle that. Still, for me, I think this formula's working for Tennessee. It kind of goes against all analytics. It goes against a lot of conventional thinking, this entire team. Just on Derrick Henry as well, I think I saw a stat that he's had 1,800 yards over his last 16 games, including 18 touchdowns, which absolutely qualifies you as the best running back in the competition. And you touched on that last week, Nick, as well. You were suggesting that Henry goes crazy in these last bits of the year. Yeah. He takes off. He did it in a playoff game as well.
It's funny. All of his splits are like the last half of the season, and a lot of his splits this season are the last halves of games. He's just like he's like he's like a finisher, a closer in baseball, really. I think that's when he thrives in those scenarios.
Well, he's a bull. He's a bull, and he like you see, he punishes tired defenses because they just can't handle his power.
Yeah.
And guys, might as well bring it up now as well. $41 to win the AFC. I know in instant come on, Tennessee. 41, you could put it into a book. If you've got the Raiders in there at the moment as a nice little hedge, they could, the Ravens rather, not the Raiders. You could find, a little avenue there because I think they're going to get in. They've still got a couple of games against Houston as well. Who would have thunk it?
Yeah.
James. James, 41. Stop. Just stop.
Yeah, look,
Tennessee.
No. But we're seeing, I know it's a little bit different in the NFL, but we are seeing trends across multiple sports about just get in, baby. You know what I mean? Washington Nationals just won the World Series. They were 20 games below 500 at the halfway mark of the year. 41 might be worth your while. Might be worth a little bit there. Okay. Just got to get in. And if stranger thing, and if the matchups, like you spoke about before, if they were to say, play the Ravens in a divisional playoff game in that second week and exploit that run defense, yes, they probably then have a matchup against Chiefs or Patriots the week after. But hey, then your 41 ticket could look pretty good.
Yeah.
And you can do something with it. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Will you guys finally allow me to use that T word for the Raiders? Because they are trash.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they're covering this week, so.
Because I copped a lot of flack.
And that $41 is going to go out to $51. So get on Tennessee next week after the trap game of the week. That's my advice.
I think it'll be gone. That would be out.
Okay.
They won't be making it if they don't win this game.
We'll check back next week what Tennessee's AFC price is, just for fun. San Fran, Sunday Night Football, Seattle. -1 at LA. The total is 48.5. I initially had this as a pass, but then I answered my own question that I'm going to pose to the audience. And you can tweet us at Woot and Y, at Stats Insider. I think Seattle, I'll talk to about Seattle in a little bit, but that was vintage Rams last week. The big question is, can they do it again? If you think that answer is yes, you back the Rams. If you think the answer is no, you back the Seahawks. I think they can do it again. And I'm taking LA +1 to win at home and the money line. I think they win outright. I think they win this game. I still think Seattle are closer to a 500 team than their current record. They've been a little bit lucky at times. That's the nature of the NFL. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're still a bit overrated. They're not as good as their record suggests. Do you agree, James?
My love for Seattle is very pronounced on this podcast, and I have been
listening to grunge music lately.
Yeah, of course. It's one of my favorite genres. It genuinely is. But in terms of the Seahawks, also from a futures perspective, hopefully we did snap up that 325 divisional price because it's flip of the coin now.
Yep.
And the 9 is off the board as well for winning the NFC Championship. That's into 4 and 5 at places as well. They're a good team. I disagree with you, Josh, in terms of luck. I think they're amazingly opportunistic. This is the way that defense is set as well. They get those big timely turnovers. That's not flukish. That's just really good sort of.
Turnovers are fluky though. Interceptions are fluky.
But the Seahawks have been doing that for a decade. That's a decade worth of work for Pete Carroll with coming up with massive plays at massive times. And then they hand it over to Wilson, who we'd all agree is top 2, top 3 at very worst regarding, from a quarterback perspective. And plus, you guys have noticed as well, it's not just Carson now. Penny's running the ball really hard, and I know they run it like crazy. They run all day against everybody's better judgment. I love the Seahawks. I really do. Backing up once again in a big spot against the Rams going to be tough, but they've got a way of doing it. And again, if we're talking about Rams doing that again, it was against Arizona. Come on, this is a terrible defense that Goff had to bring out one good game against. So Seahawks should win it and should continue their march towards a potential number 1 seed.
Yeah, I agree with James. Like you said, Josh, last week was vintage Rams, but who was it against? It was the Cardinals.
Yeah, but the Cardinals just pushed 49ers twice over the last month.
They have no defense. The Cards. They're not good when they don't have the ball. And even when they did have the ball, they couldn't do anything with it. The Seahawks have won 5 straight since they lost to the Ravens, and they've had some big wins against the Niners and the Vikings. And if they're legit, then they win and they cover easily.
Yeah. Well, that win against the 49ers, I mean, they threw an interception, a red zone interception in overtime and still won. Like, that's a lucky win.
A bit of luck there. But they did beat the Vikings.
Yep.
And Tampa, that win, that narrow overtime win against Tampa got garbage at the time. Tampa are they're in decent form. We sort of touched on that before.
Yep.
And they can put points up as well.
They have 4 wins by 8 points against the Bengals, Steelers, Browns, and Rams. That's 4 wins by 8 points, combined 8 points. I don't know. I just feel like you could easily count them as losses. I know you can do that with every team, but I'm just.
We can do that, and let's also judge them equally on those massive wins. Like that was a huge win. Like their 2 biggest wins this season. They've looked in a lot of trouble in that first quarter. San Francisco jumped out 10-zip, and Seattle reeled them in and got big plays at big times. Same as Minnesota, 7-zip up, looking like everything was going right. Again, Seattle ended up putting 34 points on the board. I really like the way the team is constructed. I think they're really well drilled. I just love them.
I can't wait to bet against them in the playoffs. We're gonna have fun. This is a great set. The NFC is gonna be so much fun.
Hopefully, that's the thing with trading futures as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You could have made your profit by now. We threw it out. Well, I had them as an over win total at the start of the year, which was 8.5 wins at the start of the year. Seattle. So you've already got that as well. Like that's the thing with Seattle.
Yep. No, I like it. I like it. I like the chat. It's good.
It's not just on this podcast either that James is bullish about the Seahawks.
Yeah,
he's been sending me messages every week throughout the week. Every time Seattle wins,
mixed in with Wipers and Nirvana lyrics as well. So
done well. I mean, on Betfair, they're into like $3 to win the NFC, which I just think's too short now. But you're right. That division price a few weeks ago was very good price taking there. It just made sense given the nature of the division. Obviously that game, when they play each other again, you can just then kind of take whatever side you want and hedge with that game and the result there for you.
And it might not even come down to that, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
At worst.
Yeah. Last game of the week, Monday Night Football, New York Giants at Philly. Philly minus 9.5 now. The total is 45.5. I know Philly shouldn't be giving this much points to anyone, but the Giants are running into a buzzsaw here, I think. Giants have now lost 8 straight by an average of 12.3 points per defeat. Daniel Jones has completed just 56% of his passes and averaged 195 pass yards out of the past 2 games, but he is out. So I really, really love this at the 8.5. Like I was just all over the minus 8.5. Now I have this weird feeling about the Eli Manning coming back and vintage Manning, like, I don't know. I feel like this. We've seen Eli Manning pull off some of the most stunning upset wins of all time. So you kind of just like, it's crazy. But I still like Philly minus 9.5 under the 10 here. But I took it 8.5 yesterday. My numbers really like this. I think my numbers have this close. I think my numbers have the Giants as the 3rd worst team in the NFL. The Bengals have leapfrogged them now. And the Jets have leapfrogged them as well. So the Giants are tumbling down in my ratings. If the Redskins somehow beat the Packers, and Giants get blown out, I think the Giants could end up being, closer to Miami than anyone else above them at this point. So I really like it's not even that I like Philly that much. I just don't rate the Giants at all.
It's a blockbuster Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
Prime time.
These games are always they've been terrible the last few years, the Giants Philly games. I'm sorry.
There have been some great ones though.
Yeah, they have been. But the last 2 years, last 2 years have been awful. Very awful.
Yeah. Terrible. Look, I woke up this morning and saw the Daniel Jones news and the Eli Manning news, and immediately I had this kind of just surreal weirdness. I don't know if it's good news or bad news. Like, yes, Daniel Jones is out of the game. That's probably good news. But then you've got Eli Manning. That's also probably good news. But is it? I I don't know. Look, the Eagles, they have to be rattled by the press that they're getting in Philadelphia, and they just have to turn up at some point. They're too talented to not play their best football at some point. And especially with the Cowboys leaving that door ajar for them to kind of walk in and steal that division lead. Eagles run home, the Giants obviously, Washington Redskins, the Cowboys in Philly, and then the Giants again. If they win out, they make playoffs. If they don't, they go home, and season is a complete waste. So at some point, they've got to turn up and play football. Hopefully it's this week, but that pass from me.
We've been treated the last couple of weeks with a couple of really good Monday night games. This ain't one. But I thought it was an interesting insight into Nick's life and news feed that he wakes up to the Eli Manning breaking news. It sounded so dramatic when you said that. It was wonderful.
I'm just imagining you waking up in sweats at like 2:30, like sitting upright like the Undertaker and just like, Eli!
or a Sega Whiteside has been upgraded to probable.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Breaking news.
You got to say Artega. You got to pronounce the Artega. That's it.
Artega. No play from me at all on this game. Okay. Absolutely not.
All right, so I'm the only one. I'm the junkie here, betting on Philly close to a 10-point.
We're still talking Pacific Northwest.
Exactly. Lock of the week. We talked off air before we started. We didn't have one, but I've made an executive decision to go with Derrick Henry, 100+ rushing yards. The player props aren't out here yet, but looking at his projections and things across the board, I'd imagine he's going to be set at about 99.5 or 100. Yes. So I think 100+ at $1.90. If it's any less than that, or any less than like $1.80, I'd probably be passing on that. So close to as even money as you can get. Shop around. I think that's probably a good bet for you there, Derrick Henry.
And you can probably have a dabble at some of the larger
the bigger
lines,
the
alternate lines.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we've both said, or all have said that he should have a big game.
Yep.
So if you look at some of those 115, 125 yards.
Yep. Exactly.
Probably get some odds there too.
I've been hitting just every last 3 weeks. I've just been finding 150 pluses and 100 and just hitting 10-yard increments and just hoping for the best. And my Colts didn't let me down last week, so they did well. All right, locks of the week. James, why don't you start us off?
Really like Tennessee, KC +3, and Tampa to cover their 3-point line as well.
Okay, and you touched on Tennessee at $41 for your long shot earlier.
Yep.
All right, Nick, what have you got?
Going with the over 43 Baltimore Buffalo total. Like I said before, Miami +5, and Derrick Henry, as I said, 119 rushing yards. I think I found earlier for about $2.50. But I'm keen to kind of see when those odds come out here. What some of the 125, 135 lines might look like. And long shot, like I said, I might have a dabble on the double. San Francisco +3 if you can find it, and under 44.5 at $3.75, $4 at some books. So have a look.
Okay, that's interesting. I like it. I like the double. My locks of the week this week, after a disastrous week 13, we're going to bounce back. We're just going to do it. Cincy +8.5 against Cleveland. Philadelphia -9.5. I can't believe I'm taking that as a best bet against the Giants, and New York Jets -5 against Miami. Going against the grain here, against the public. I think everyone's all aboard Miami and having fun with them, but I think the Jets kind of kick back into gear offensively. They can't be that bad.
And after last week's 0 of 9, we now can't go 9 of 9 because we're on opposite sides. So
yes. Oh, no. There you go. So that helps the listeners. So just cross those two off, and go nuts there. And my long shot, George Kittle, 100+ receiving yards at 275 against the Saints. He's just finding, he's finding form even with the broken bone in his ankle. He's just a baller. That's where we're going. All right, no Darryl again this week. The man of mystery remains more mysterious with his absence. The less we have him, the more intrigued I am by Darryl. But how did the model do last week? The model actually won last week, which makes sense given that we all went terrible. So the model was the person to take last week. Sorry, we should have told you that before.
When the man normally fails, the machine picks up the slack. And that's exactly what happened. I think on the pod it went 2 and 1.
Yep.
Detroit covered and Tampa Bay money line.
Yep. Did well.
Also, Detroit had a decent lean on Detroit money line as well, and that wasn't far off. 17-20 or something with about 2 minutes to go. So
yeah, they kind of blew that a little bit, unfortunately. It's in perfect Patricia fashion. So.
Yeah, and not perfect Trubisky fashion.
Exactly.
Anyway, I think for the rest of the week, you'd end up going 3-3 on NFL lines, 1-1 on the green plays, and 1-2 on totals, 0 green plays. So I wasn't too confident on the totals last week, but not a horrible week, also not a great week.
Yep. And what is it like this week across the board? Any strong leans or anything?
There's not a lot. There's only about 4 or 5 bets at the moment on site. Yep. Remembering if you're listening to this over the weekend that we record this podcast on a Thursday afternoon, Australian Eastern time. So, as of kind of today's midday, 12 o'clock Thursday, there wasn't a lot on site. But it does like Detroit again at the line. The plus 13, that's a 5% orange play. And then there are a couple of 3% orange unders bets in totals, like Minnesota, Detroit under, Rams, Seahawks under, and Eagles, Giants under. And there's a couple of there's nothing really official on site in terms of a long shot. But I was going through all the different machinations on site earlier, and there's a couple of ones that kind of stand out. Detroit head to head, there's a 4% edge on, which takes them to about a 21% probability as opposed to 16 or 17% as the bookies would have. The other one is Miami. Got a 3% edge on Miami head to head, which takes them to about 36% instead of 33. And Arizona, also a 3% edge. There's no official play on it, but that takes the Arizona money line price or probability to about 45%. So it's not far off.
I'm on the same page. I nearly made Arizona one of my locks, but I was just hesitant after last week because they're just terrible.
Actually, I should mention as well that the model actually has the Rams favorite.
Okay.
Against the Seahawks. So.
I know a few guys I know really like the Rams this week. So
it's only by 1%. It's flips by 2%.
Yeah, it opened at 3 and it got hammered immediately. And actually looking now, some books now flipped completely. Rams are favorite but juiced. Shop around. So it's been hit hard. So who knows? Who knows whether that's sharps or public? It's hard to tell with the US market's just so different now than it used to be. So with the legalization. So head to statsinsider.com.au. Keep checking out on the model and articles that James is churning out content on a weekly. And Big Bash and things are starting up very, very shortly.
Yeah, exactly right. And come and tell us if there's something you want us to chat about or anything that you want to kind of contribute to. Jump on Twitter and come at us. Let's have a chat and we'll see what we can do on next week's podcast.
Yeah, definitely. So at Stats Insider, at Woot and Y, and that's our week 14. And until then, we'll be back as we get to the pointy end of the season and well into Christmas season as well. And we'll be back next week.